All right, everybody, this is Craig Caudill. I'm the director of Nature Reliance School and survival instructor with DansDepot.com. And today what we are very fortunate to have is Doug Tackett from KEMA. We are going to talk to Doug about emergency preparedness, particularly as it relates to the DANS plan. So if you don't mind, Doug, can you just tell us what your background is and what you're doing these days?
Okay, I'm the Emergency Management Director for Pike County, Kentucky, as well as the President for the Kentucky Emergency Management Association. We do a lot of different things here with emergency management. We also have in our office the 911 addressing program and our geographic information system, which is our mapping, where we do all the mapping in the county as well. So we use mapping to map our disasters and all of our relief operations as when we do have disasters.
So how does that work with the GIS? Is that something that you've got somebody that's out doing whenever a disaster occurs, you're mapping out so that you can get appropriate resources in those locations, or what's going on there?
Yeah, that's what we try to do. We use it on our damage assessment so we can map all the damage or the damage paths, depending on the type of storms that we have. And we map all that damage from the field, and it comes back here to the office, and it's all put on a map where we can show our state and federal partners when they come in to assist us, or if they come in to assist us.
Well, that brings up a good question then. So how do you all determine if a particular disaster needs to go to the state level?
Well, it depends on the type of damage that you have and how much damage you have, and if it overwhelms our resources that we have locally. If we have to ask for additional resources, we do that through the state level, and it's usually aid that comes initially from other counties and then also from the state level if it escalates to that point.
So if there's a particular disaster in your area, what's going to happen is you're going to contact your counterpart in another area, and then if that doesn't suit your needs, you're going to contact the state?
Well, normally we'll make all those requests through the state. We'll ask them to contact the county that we know has resources that we need, and if that county can provide those, they usually will. We are fortunate to have a pretty good number of resources in this county, so it takes a lot to get us overwhelmed to where we have to request assistance from others. But occasionally we've had to do that, and we've requested from local counties nearby as well as state resources.
Oh, fantastic. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure we got into today, Doug, is basically we put together a DANS plan, and we tried to get you a copy ahead of time, and we just want to get your thoughts on it because we're doing everything we can at DANS Depot to try to help people be more prepared. What were your thoughts on the DANS plan when you got it?
Well, when I looked at it, it looked to me like it was very well thought out. It seems to have everything that you need to know, or a good set of resources here that people can use to get what they need to set up a family plan.
So was there anything that jumped out at you as being exceptionally good, or anything that you thought, man, I wish they would change some wording on that, or something we could improve upon?
Well, I really haven't seen anything that I would change. The only thing right off that I haven't seen is some type of a battery radio or something like that, or a hand crank radio and I may have overlooked that. If it's in there, just tell me. But that's something I would like to see added, because that's one way we get information out to people is through broadcast media, especially radio stations.
And that's a fantastic idea. We one of the things that we're doing is that we have an exceptionally busy forum on our website, and we have some really high-class people on the forums, and we've put the DANS plan out to them and asked them if they could add and take away, because we've got people that have been federally involved in disaster preparedness as well, and local and state on that area, as well as military law enforcement. And that is definitely one of the things that they brought up as well, is the crank radio.
Yeah, that's a good item to have in there, because people can use that to stay in touch with what's going on. Like I said, we use broadcast media a lot. Locally, we have, I think there's 9 radio stations in the East Kentucky Broadcasting Group, and they work with us. Basically, when we have a disaster and we've got a lot of information to provide and push out to people, they basically turn their radio stations over to us and link all those together. So everybody out there we know has the opportunity to get the information they need to know what's going on and what they need to be doing.
Well, for somebody like me that's not involved in the type of work that you do, is that part of what we hear is the emergency broadcast system? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, not necessarily the emergency broadcast system. That comes into play for storm warnings and things of that nature.
Okay.
This is mostly after the fact, so that people can know what we're doing. If we're setting up places like points of distribution for supplies, where those are and what they need to do to get them. If we're out doing damage assessment, we let people know that we have teams out in the field and areas that they're working in, so they won't think it's somebody that's out there trying to, be a shyster or whatever.
Right.
Like we see a lot of those come in for disasters, but let people know what's going on, what we're doing, and best ways that they can report their damages and things to us, so that they can remain safe and have the resources that they need.
Well, that brings up two questions in my mind. First, you mentioned shysters there. How would people that are listening to this broadcast today know when somebody's a shyster or trying to make it a bad situation, trying to take advantage of a bad situation? Well,
normally those come in to try to help you do cleanup and things like that, and offer what seems to be deals too good to be true. And usually they take the money and run. If they suspect somebody, they can contact the local law enforcement or even our office for that matter and find out if they're legitimate. FEMA has a list of people that are contractors that do business with them and also work disasters privately. So check and see if they're on those lists and if they're on the up and up.
Okay, so the second question that came up with your previous comments was, in any particular disaster, what do you see as being the biggest supply issue or things that people are going to need? Things that you all provide.
Mostly water. It's drinking water. I think 97% of our counties on city water systems, and the problems we've had mostly is flash floods. They usually take out water lines, and it takes several days to get those back in. And you've got boil water advisories until the systems are flushed out. And we try to provide drinking water through those. And that's been the biggest thing for us is the availability of drinking water.
So when you say drinking water that you are providing, you are actually bringing in bottles of water, or are you bringing it in bulk and people come and get it in bulk? How do you all do that?
We do it in bottled water, either gallons or half-liter bottles.
And the supplies that you all provide, where do the funds come from to get those supplies? Is that donations, or is that all government agencies?
It's all government agency. We provide it if the disaster is big enough to get a federal declaration, then our county is reimbursed for that up to I think like 80% of it, 75 or 80% of it's reimbursed by FEMA for emergency work. But if it's not, then we have to bite the bullet on that and pay for it ourselves out of the government funds.
Right. And I guess in the situation, that's going to be of vital importance, because one of the things that we communicated in the Dan's plan is, and you tell me what you think about this, because I teach a lot of survival and preparedness classes, and one of the things that I always try to teach people is the law of threes, and the way I tell them is that you've got to have hydration, as soon as possible. And we try to do it law of three, so we tell them 3 days.
Right.
Is that something that you feel like is a suitable methodology for instructing people?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you don't have water, you're going to be in big trouble real quick.
Right. So how often is it that the personnel that are working for you all, you have trouble with them not being hydrated and stuff of that nature?
It's not too bad. We make sure our people try to have what they need to keep themselves going, and water is one of the things that they do. We have people that haul the water out to the points of distribution, and we work it out of the warehouse here too. But everybody seems to be able to stay hydrated. We keep them supply on hand, and haven't really had any problems with that.
Fantastic. That's good. That's real good. Well, one of the things that I asked you earlier is would it be acceptable to you if we kind of go through the Dan's plan and look at some of these sections and just get some feedback from you? Does that sound okay to you?
Sure, sounds good.
Well, one of the first things that we try to communicate people is, what most people refer to as a EDC kit or everyday carry kit. And some of the items that we recommend people have is some sort of fire starter, so that if they need to maintain core body temp, they have a fire starter. Something simple as a lighter or a fire steel, or what some people refer to as a casualty blanket or emergency space blanket for body warmth, as well as a flashlight and a knife.
Right.
What kind of things jump out at you as something that you would like to see us add to that?
Well,
the radio.
The radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, the radio. Other than that, I think you pretty well got it covered with the blankets and the fire starters. I think you pretty well got it covered there. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head that you might need to add in that respect.
Okay, good. Well, we also recommend people get a vehicle or a get home kit, and one of the ththings I kind of added in because I'm the one that wrote this piece, Dan's plan. One of the things I wanted to make sure we got in there was jumper cables, simply because it seems like not very many people have those anymore.
That's right. Not too many do, and it's a good thing to have.
So, and the other thing is, it seems like our society, our culture is getting more dependent upon electronic goods. So another thing that we've added in a get home kit is a basic compass, because so many people are dependent upon these GPSs and these TomToms and any number of things. That, what are your thoughts on those?
Well, they're fine as long as you've got electricity, and if you don't have electricity or the batteries go down, you're going to have problems. So a compass is a good thing to have. You can't always depend on electronics in disasters. They're only as good as the batteries that they have, and eventually they're going to go down.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going through our checklist, and one of the things that we do have in there is the crank radio. But I have a good question for you, or at least I think it's a good question. I've been looking at a lot of these radios that are either crank or solar powered. What are your thoughts on the different options? Because quite frankly, I understand survival pretty well, but I'm not real good on electronic equipment like crank or solar powered radios. Which would you think would be best?
Well, I haven't really had any experience with solar-powered radios. I have the crank radios, and they seem to work pretty well. So I really couldn't give you a good answer on a solar-powered radio. It would concern me about them working at night, though, unless they had a good battery life.
Right. So I guess they're supposed to, because, again, I'm not real familiar with them either. They're supposed to store some energy, at least, for their use. But if you've had cloud cover for a few days, I'm assuming you probably wouldn't be able to utilize those very well.
May not. That would concern me.
Cool. Well, one of the things that people that do what we do, both Dan's Depot, because we supply survival kits, and as well as somebody like me that teaches survival, we always talk about the idea of doing one of two things: either sheltering in place or bugging out. And so I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about that, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So the particular, number one, I guess, is what do you think the biggest threat to people in our area, let's say central and eastern Kentucky, what do you see as being the biggest threats for us here in our state?
The biggest threats historically have been severe weather, whether it's tornadoes or straight-line winds, severe thunderstorms of that nature, flash flooding. That's the biggest threats that we see for people in central and eastern Kentucky.
So the other one that seems to come up in a lot of discussion, but it hasn't happened in so long, it just seems to get put to the side, is something along the New Madrid fault line. If there's a large earthquake in our state, is that something that you all consider or work with or get prepared for?
Yeah, we actually have a state plan that deals with the New Madrid fault and an earthquake. We did a large exercise a couple of years ago that basically emulated a large earthquake event in the west that affected like 24 counties. And What they were looking at was taking the eastern part of the state to provide aid to the western part of the state for as long as they could until federal resources could come in.
So that's something, again, like you were talking about earlier, let's say Western Kentucky gets shut down, because that's going to be, north of Memphis and around Paducah and land between the lakes and all that. That's probably going to be the hardest hit area. Is that correct?
That's correct. That would be the hardest hit area.
And so if I understand what you were saying earlier, if that area gets hit, then those such as you all that are in far eastern Kentucky and probably won't have as many damaging effects, you all would then supply western Kentucky as best you can.
That's correct.
And then it would be the determination of those in western Kentucky to then take it up to the state and federal, well, at least to the state level, and then the state level personnel will determine if FEMA's needed to come in.
That's correct.
Oh, okay, that's real good. I like it how it seems like we're trying to help our own as best we can.
Yeah, well, with disasters, that's what we've got to try to do is help our own until other aid can come. And one of the things we try to stress to people is that you need to be prepared to take care of yourself for at least 36 hours.
So what would you, in that regard, to play off what you just said, what would you say that people need in those 36 hours that they've got to have?
Definitely they've got to have water. And, of course, some means of shelter. If you can shelter in your home, fine. If not, try to get with relatives. But, the basics, food, water, and shelter is what you've got to have the first 36 hours to be self-sufficient.
So what? How would you think? Because, and I'm not trying to. We try to do two things here at Dan's Depot. We try to educate folks, and we also try to supply them with gear.
Right.
And the beautiful thing about those that are the founders of our organization is that we try to supply as much training as we can for free. That's kind of why we're doing this podcast. In that regard, I don't want to focus too much attention on our kits, but we do sell kits and we try to help people do that. How do you all feel about kits? Do you all do anything where you supply organizations or individuals or families with kits, or is that something that they should go out and do on their own?
It's something they need to do on their own. We provide them with information as to what they should have in their kits, much like you do. And along the same lines, but they need to be the ones that go out and pick up those materials or the supplies that go in their kit, because they may have some special needs, and we try to address special needs, people with special needs that may, things they might need to pick up for them, like additional medications or medical supplies and things of that nature.
Well, that brings up a personal subject of my own. My daughter is a type 1 diabetic. Uh-huh. And so, it's one of those situations that she is insulin dependent. Let's say in an emergency situation, our house is destroyed as well as her insulin. Or you can assume somebody else has another similar need, a medical need.
Right.
What would my family need to do in that situation?
It's where you need to work with your doctor, where the doctor and pharmacist both, so that they can make sure that you've got additional medications on hand and maybe be able to pack some in a kit, if it's a go kit or whatever. If you have to bug out, you can grab it and it'll be there. Some medications, of course, have expiration dates and have certain ways they've got to be stored, but they should be able to work around those in kits, and hopefully the doctor and pharmacist will work with you so you'll have what you need.
Yeah, and we have, due to the nature of my work, I spend a lot of time thinking, considering such things. So we have done that exact thing with our doctor and pharmacist. I just want to make sure we get that information out there for others who might not be thinking that way. Particularly with insulin, because it's, after it's open, it's going to expire within 30 days. And so you need to have that extra supply that's available, which is really important.
Yes, it is. And there's other medications that they'll work with you on, so you have a supply on hand that you can keep in a to-go bag or whatever real quick if you got to run.
Fantastic. Well, Doug, what I'd also like to do is along in Dan's plan, we have several of these different events. I wouldn't mind just reading off some of the titles and just anything that comes to mind. If you could share it, would be great. Does that sound acceptable to you?
Sure.
Well, the first one that we have is floods. What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say floods? How do you all, or what do you all do?
Well, with floods, if you're like a river flood, and exclude flash floods for the moment, on river floods, we usually have 24 to 48 hours warning on those. We do have some flood control on our rivers. We've got 3 forks of the Big Sandy River. We'll use that for example up here. And only one fork of the river has flood control on it, so we usually get flooding from one or the other. But
Gotcha.
we usually have enough lead time to warn people in the flood-prone areas that to expect a flood, and that gives them time to make arrangements to get their, well, they should have their kits already made, but they get their kits and make arrangements to go stay somewhere else out of the flood areas. So ample warning in flood situations like that helps alleviate a lot of problems. It gives people time to make arrangements to move out. And but with flash flooding, that usually hits pretty quick, and there's usually no warning for it or very little warning.
Right.
Those we had a couple of bad events 2 years ago where it hit just about dark and caught a lot of people off guard, and people were able to get out of their homes, but we were getting people off the rooftops and stuff like that.
Wow.
Had it happened 3 or 4 hours later and people in bed, it would have been quite
different,
devastating, you might say, as far as loss of life would go.
Right.
But warning versus no warning. There's not a lot you can say about that. It doesn't give you a lot of time to get ready.
Right.
The Weather Service, however, is getting better at flash flood watches and warnings, so we try to make people aware that there's watches out and let them know that they need to be ready to move should the event start to unfold, and that's helped some. But one of the biggest problems is making sure people will listen. Right,
trying to get them to pay attention to the actual watches and warnings is probably a tough thing.
Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is.
Well, I guess that brings up tornadoes, too. I mean, it appears as if the Weather Service is getting better at predicting tornadoes, but that's definitely something that is basically impossible to nail down, I assume. How do you feel about tornadoes? Anything you can add?
Well, I think they're getting better at predicting the events, but still, warning time on some of these storms is you may have just 4 or 5 minutes of warning time, or you could have as much as 15 or 20. It all depends on the storms and how they unfold. It's still tough to predict.
Right. Well, moving on, another weather-related event. What comes to mind when I say just winter conditions? What would you tell our listeners in that regard?
Well, winter conditions brings back the storm. I'm sure everybody remembers the ice storm of '09, what that was like, and that should be a lesson in preparedness for homes, because a lot of people were caught without.
Right.
So it gives you another reason that Kentucky's weather is sometimes extreme, and you need to be prepared for it all the time, not just in the winter or in the summer months. But we see a lot of need for preparedness, especially winter storms. Now, we were fortunate that we weren't hit by the ice storm up here.
Yeah.
But later that year in December, we did have a big snowfall event that left about 90% of the county without power.
Yeah, wow.
For about 10 days. So we had a similar event that caught a lot of people without, and we had shelters open, warming stations and all that to keep people going through the event as well.
Yeah, my family during that ice storm was without power for close to 3 weeks.
Wow.
And so we had a pretty difficult time of it. At least the conditions were. But again, we're a pretty prepared family, so we actually had some fun with it. So that's good. That's a good thing, I guess. The next one that comes up is terrorism. That's part of our Dan's plan. What are your thoughts on, what comes to mind when I say terrorism for you guys and what you all need to do?
Well, I know we probably don't have any Al-Qaeda cells around here, but we do have local or homegrown terrorists that are out there and about, and it's not always somebody from a foreign country. We could have it right here at home, and it's something we try to plan for and make people aware of, that terrorism at home can strike just like it can anywhere else.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if we don't have any number of different cells within our own state. I mean, that's kind of scary.
Yes, it is.
But it's possible. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and it can just take somebody that's disgruntled enough for some reason that he wants to take something out on society somewhere and target government installation or something like a school, and that's happened, but not. We've been fortunate in Kentucky. I don't know of any events here recently, but we see it on the news in other parts of the country.
The next one that comes up is bioterrorism, which is obviously terrorism again, but any specific things that you can think of when I say the word bioterrorism?
Well, it can happen anywhere at any time. We've had several white powder events around Kentucky that have been letters delivered to federal buildings and such with some type of white powder stating it was anthrax or whatever. So it can happen anywhere.
Right.
We're not immune from any of this, but I know we've had several events in Kentucky, and it takes a lot of resources to deal with those initially.
I guess that's one of them very. It seems like a far out there possibility, but I mean there's been some of these white letter events happening on the federal level in real recent memory, so it's
right.
Definitely something that could occur.
Yes, it can. It can occur at any time, and it can occur at, it could be somebody can receive something at home, or it could be at a business, or it could be at a government agency, or whatever. It could be anywhere at any time.
Well, that kind of takes us through the Dan's plan. A couple more questions, and we'll probably be done here, Doug. You've been incredibly helpful so far, but I want to make sure I get a couple more things in.
Okay.
At the very end of our Dan's plan, we have a list of things that we suggest. How should I get my family prepared? So our listeners that are following us right now in this particular segment, what would you say to them? You have an opportunity to tell some folks what should they be doing right now to get prepared.
Well, they need to get the information on how to fix a home plan, how to evacuate the home, different ways to get in and out, where to meet outside. Get together with your family and create a plan. There's a lot of resources. You guys have the information of what they need to put together a plan and to put together a kit. Both need to be done, and everybody in the family needs to know what their role is. But there's a lot of resources out there that they can get to do this, and it's easy to do. Just sit down and take the time to do it.
Fantastic. That pretty much mirrors what we've said as well. I just want to make sure that we're listening to you too, because you folks always have some more and different information at times too, which kind of brings up a topic I wanted to probably conclude with, is that it seems like there's a lot of people out there that are on either one or two different teams. They're in the team that's going to seek a lot of assistance from someone such as KEMA or FEMA, and there's a lot of people that just have a lot of distrust. I don't know I necessarily want to call them anti-government. They just don't want to. They just have a lot of distrust for someone such as FEMA and stuff of that nature. And what we wanted to do was try to encourage people to have an open mind to listen to both. How do you feel about all that?
Well, there's a lot of people there's people that distrust federal agencies. They don't understand the programs or what's available to them. And there's some people too that there's another category out there that's kind of proud and doesn't want to take assistance. They'd rather try to make it on their own, no matter how tough it gets. And we try to reach out to all those. We try to reach out to everybody and let them know what's available, so if they do need it, they can get what help they need. FEMA has community outreach people that come in during federal disasters, and they'll go into the neighborhoods that have damage and basically go door to door and talk to people and let them know what's available and how to apply, and help them. If they need to, they'll walk them through the process. So they're really helpful, and we try to do that on the local level too, to make sure everybody understands what assistance is available, so that they can get what they need to get back on their feet and get life back to some type of normalcy.
So I'm assuming, just listening to you, sound like I've really enjoyed our conversation. It sounds like you're really down to earth fella, which I appreciate. I wouldn't expect anything more or less from a good Kentucky guy.
Thanks.
But it seems like, I mean, you understand that there are people that are self-reliant, and it's not that you in a position that you're in, you don't have a problem with those folks, but you definitely want to help them if you can.
That's right. We want them to know what's available if they do need help, and hopefully if they need it, they'll take it. Some do and some don't. It's just the way some people are, and you can't change it.
Absolutely. Well, Doug, that's really all that I had for you, unless there's anything that has come up through our conversation that you would like to expand on, or you would like to say as we sound off here.
Well, nothing comes to mind right off other than, just if you're listening and you haven't made a plan with your family, it's really time to do that. We have some weather events coming in this afternoon. It's going to cover the Commonwealth. Mostly, I think, central and eastern Kentucky. We need to be ready for that, so it's a good time to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good time to start. These are supposed to be some pretty good storms that'll be coming across this evening and tonight.
Yeah, so, I saw something where there might be winds upwards of close to 100 miles per hour even in some parts of the country tonight. So I don't know that we're going to see anything that bad, but it could get bad here.
Yeah, I hope we don't, but we still could see some events of the storm, and they're not ruling out the possibility of tornadoes too. So, be ready, keep an eye on the weather, and be ready to move if you need to a safe place.
Well, fantastic, Doug. I really appreciate your time. Again, this is Craig Caudill with Nature Reliant School. I'm also a survival instructor with DansDepot.com. We've been chatting today with Doug Tackett. And, Doug, we really appreciate your time and all your expertise and helping all our listeners out.
Well, you're very welcome, and, call again sometime.
We will. We'll keep you online. We'll get up with you again sometime soon. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.